Be a part of the best pro wrestling podcast today by supporting the Going In Raw Patreon. You can enjoy access to the live taping of the show, exclusive merchandise, and patron-only episodes, and so much more. Support Going In Raw today. Click the link in the description.
This is Charlotte, and you're watching Going In Raw. That sounds terrible.
What's up? This is the most must-see WWE superstar of all time and his lovely, gorgeous wife,
Marie.
and you are going in Raw.
What's up? It's your girl, Sasha Banks, the legit boss, and you are watching Going In Raw.
Oh, baby, I like it raw. Oh, baby, I like it raw. And you are tuned in to Going In Raw right now. How you doing?
Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And we've got a special guest with us today, Larson.
Yes.
And he's sort of the featured subject of the latest Rooster Teeth documentary called House of Pain.
Correct, which is available now on Rooster Teeth First.
Yeah, it's our old buddy, James Willems. How you doing, James?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
It's going good. I feel like, so we only have like a limited amount of time with you, and we want to talk about this documentary, but I feel like we can spend easily an hour just catching up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, it feels like just yesterday when, like, a couple times a year we would head on down to the old offices back in the day and, like, visit our old family away from home.
Yeah. And conversation would invariably turn towards wrestling because
that's true.
We're wrestling nerds.
Yeah.
I know we've had several conversations with both you and Lawrence about wrestling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I guess when we saw this project was well, first we were on our way to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And I remember this. You DM us and say, "Hey, did you guys go to WrestleMania?" And my first thought was, "Oh, are they going to WrestleMania? That'd be cool."
Oh, I know. And then you dashed our hopes.
Yeah.
Because, like, not only were you not going to be at Mania, you were going to be performing at a show
across the country
that we would not be able to attend because of WrestleMania.
Yeah. Well,
but that ended up being for this.
So the thing is, there's a lot of supportive people in my life. I have like lots of really great friends and people who will support me no matter what I do. But when you take that with a cross section of friends that actually genuinely enjoy wrestling, then it gets a little smaller. And when they finally figured out what date was that we were going to do the wrestling match, I was like, and like we were able to announce it and like invite people. I was like, well, I know the first two people. The perfect people, I know it's not super close for you guys, but it's still like, hey, maybe if you're going to be in the area or whatever, you're interested. I was like, this is perfect. And then you guys were like going to WrestleMania. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
That was actually kind of a thing with setting up that whole match. Luckily, I didn't have to do any of that. But Logan X, who runs that promotion, he was like, yeah, normally we wouldn't do an event like this against WrestleMania because we're not crazy. Because where everyone goes, but that was the weekend for it. And it sucks that you guys couldn't come to it, but maybe future matches.
Okay, well, hold on. That was going to be our last question.
Literally have a list of questions.
We'll
That's the last one.
We'll get to that first.
Absolutely.
Or we can ask these questions in reverse.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
So the documentary basically charts you basically living out sort of a childhood dream, and then Lawrence being kind of your wingman and challenging himself to become pro wrestlers. Number one, you do this in the span of a week, which is absolutely nuts.
Crazy.
What's even more nuts is that when we see you perform, it's, oh my God, they learned all that in a week, because you guys are actually pretty decent.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. For me, I was kind of lucky because going in, I had a stupid ton of encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling moves and matches and how things flow and how you're supposed to act and perform in a ring. So like, even though I hadn't been trained, there are certain things that like as a kid, I'm like, this is how you'd suplex something. You'd grab your buddy and you'd like suplex him onto your bed. You kind of like watch to see how things work. So when we actually got into a school and they started teaching us these things, it was like, I kind of already had, I keep describing it as if you grew up in a language where like you had a parent that spoke Spanish, but you had never been to Spain or anything like that. You had never gone someplace. You just kind of grew up in a household where it was spoken. Then you go to Spain and you can kind of be like, oh, I can piece these things together. I kind of like have some idea. I'm not fluent, but I can survive in this foreign country. Lawrence, on the other side of the spectrum, is someone who didn't grow up in a household that had a bilingual household, and so he didn't know anything. So he was basically like, I have no idea. He was starting from scratch. So I think it was way easier for me to kind of take to it, and like when they say hip toss, I already know what
yeah,
it looks like, right? You
Yeah,
just need
yeah.
You just need to make sure I'm doing it safely.
Right.
And even stuff like we did have a very short amount of time. It was 6 days, and I think it was a grand total of maybe 9 training sessions over the course of 6 days. We trained twice a day, almost every single day, and everyone was pretty upfront about how little we could learn in that amount of time. But they were confident that, like, with a supportive group, we could do it, and making sure that, because the original plan was actually we were gonna go against each other. We were gonna have a match against each other.
Right.
And then Logan, he was like, I think it would make more sense for you to do a tag team match, so that way there's always gonna be someone in the ring who knows what they're doing. No matter
that's super
what.
smart. Yeah.
So we kind of benefited. A lot of us looking good in the ring benefits from working with other very experienced people who knew kind of how to help facilitate that.
I don't know, man. Nobody was helping you with that frog splash.
I know.
That looked like $1 million.
Thank
that
you.
looked so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were just at Raw last night, and Seth Rollins did one, and I was like, you know what, James getting that's right up there.
I
with
know
it.
he did it good. I think somebody tweeted out, maybe it was Sandra, I forget who. Somebody tweeted out a video of you pulling that off, and just on the Twitter video, I was like, that is actually very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the kind of thing too. It's funny, even that was. I wanted to do something because I knew we would be limited, and I didn't go into the process with any ego. So I was like, even though I was like, listen, if you want to teach me how to, like, power slam someone, like, I'll do it. If you want me to do a superplex, I'll do it. Like, I'm game for anything, but I didn't walk into the ring and say that because I wanted them to be able to figure out safely how to take me from point A to point B. But then there was an opportunity, and it was actually with Johnny Mundo.
Right.
Because we trained at his place. He has a ring, and we trained at his place, and he was game for anything. He's like a kid in a candy store when it comes to wrestling. Most wrestling people, when you start talking with them, you get all caught up, and then you guys just talking about wrestling. Everything's wrestling. He's definitely a fan just as much as he is a competitor. And so when we kind of got there, he went through some basics with us, and then he stopped for a minute. He's like, you guys jumped off the top rope yet? We're like, well, no, this is our second day of training, so if we haven't jumped off the top rope,
So obviously not.
He's like, well, I got a crash pad. If you guys, we can do it. We'll just jump off and we'll do it and stuff like that. And so we just started doing it, and I was like, okay, I feel comfortable on the top rope. And then during the match, I wanted to make sure I was doing something that was like, I wanted to do something that's like impressive. You know,
Yeah, of course.
There's hip tosses and body slams and stuff like that. There's Hulk Hogan moves. And then there's other moves that's like, oh my God, he really put himself out there. And so that was where I merged it. I had practiced a 450 splash a couple times.
Oh wow.
But I was like, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to snap my neck doing a frog splash, but I want to make sure it looked good, and I appreciate you saying that it did.
Oh,
No,
it looked great.
it looked really great. So when you went in for like your first sort of training session, I have like a million questions. Like Larson, we wrote down a bunch of questions.
We might not even get to any of these.
Probably
though.
not going to get to any of them.
Hey.
So here's one thing. Like, we've been watching wrestling like all three of us have been watching wrestling for a very long time. There are still, were there any moments during training? So for example, like you said in the doc, and you sort of mentioned here, it's kind of like a language. So you have like certain routines that are kind of commonplace, and we've all seen them. Was there anything that went down in training where you were like, and you don't have to divulge it because I know there's still probably some amount of like secrets, but was there, well, maybe not, was there anything that you were like, oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy that they do that.
Yes. Yeah, actually, yes. That's a great question because I had that epiphany while we were just like, a lot of it is just kind of learning to work with the people that you learn, knowing how you can confidently wrestle, and then kind of having an idea how your opponent is going to wrestle. And some matches are built on a lot of spots. You know, this is how it's going to begin, middle, and end, and then a couple minutes in between we'll mess around, we'll headlock, takedown, stuff like that, roll around on the ground or whatever. But then there's other dudes who just show up, they meet their guy, and they just kind of like do it. They figure it out in the ring in a lot of cases. And one example of that was we were just kind of messing around. It was just Lawrence is going to be just getting beat up on, and then I was working with one of their trainers at MPW called Danny Devine, and he's like, we're just going to work how to work an end of a match. We don't have a plan.
Right.
We don't have a
Right,
plan.
right, right,
Let's
right,
just
right.
work towards the end of a match. And so he's beating up on Lawrence. I'm on the apron, his tag team partner.
Yeah.
And then he hits Lawrence, knocks him out kind of in the corner. And then he comes over to me and he's like going to shout in my face, kind of like, a heel
Yeah.
instigating the good guy. And he just comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, get the hot tag, clothesline me 3 times, go for a pin." Right? And he just says it like straight up like that, but he says
Yeah.
it like he's angry.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
face, his expression in my face and stuff like that is it. If you were anywhere behind the first row, it looks like he's calling me a name. He's doing something
Yeah.
like that. But he just literally said, "Get the hot tag," and then clothesline me 3 times and pin me. And I like, and then we did it like right afterwards without it taking a beat. Then he set up an opportunity for Lawrence to get a comeback, and then Lawrence tagged me in, did the clothesline, went for the pin, and it was like that's how it was. He literally walked up to me in the middle of the ring and just told me exactly what to do next. And I was like, because you think about the stuff where it's like, you got him here and you kind of do the like
Right, yeah, of course, yeah.
like
Yeah,
drop,
make sure your
drop
mouth is
down,
covered or something like that. Yeah.
stuff like that, and then or like during the Irish Whip, there's the point where you always see their face to their ear, but I had never thought of something like that.
Yeah,
it's just so
yeah,
blatant. But they're
hide it in the open. Yeah, totally.
you just put it right there, and no one saw it. But as soon as it happened, I knew, and my reaction was like I shouted at him. I was like, I got it. Like it was like, so it was like it's stupid. Yeah, like you said, exactly. Like put it right in plain sight, and no one even sees it. And that was kind of something that I was like, oh my god, like I had never thought of that. It feels like it's sleight of hand.
Yeah.
And it is, but it's also right in front of your face.
Yeah, it would seem. Let me ask you this. So going along those lines, because I think like our audience loves to hear about sort of the minutia of like matches, how they go down. And this is a great perspective because I imagine there probably are, like if we were to interview, let's say, because we've interviewed a couple of the WWE guys before, and I would feel really awkward
Asking AJ Styles this line of questioning.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, that's what we have you here for.
Yeah.
But it would seem then, I mean, this seems kind of obvious, but like the margin of error for communication is probably razor thin, because if you lose what he said at all, like, oh crap, like I can't just say, what? Say that again. Were there any moments during your actual match when you were like, oh shit, like I totally missed it?
So the surprising thing is you can say what. You can like stop and ask. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Like it's stuff where they teach you these safety nets where if you get lost, let's tie up. Let's slow the match down.
Okay.
Like there's things procedures, and again it's kind of knowing how to work with your. It's not always a stranger that you're wrestling with.
Yeah.
It's not always a friend, but it's not always a stranger either. And so there's points where it's like he says something and then you completely miss it during an Irish whip. Hold on to the rope, right?
Yeah.
Keep it still part of the spectacle, and then that's the cue to the other guy that it's like, oh, he didn't get it. So I'm going to go at him again. Maybe I'll give him some strikes or something that he knows how to sell or whatever. Get him into a headlock, and then we'll talk it through again, and then I'll be certain. I was lucky enough that in my match, I think everything went really, really well. I was really happy with how everything kind of went, but there was a moment where, and I don't know if this is revealing too much or if it ruins anything for anyone, but there was a moment where at the start of the match, I was in a headlock, and I knew that the plan was that I was going to get out of the headlock by whipping him off me, and then from there we could move into something else. And then I started to do it, and the guy I was wrestling, he stopped me down. He didn't let me push him into the ropes, and he stopped me down, and he said, "Turn me, better angle on the audience." And so he kind of like, because he knew that if we did it this way, what it would lead into would be a less interesting view perspective for the audience. We'd basically be performing for Backstage as opposed to performing for the audience, and he knew that. So he didn't let it happen, and then he kind of like moved me in the headlock, and then he was like, "Okay, go." And it was like stuff like that just like happened on the fly, and it's like, oh man, like he's aware of it. He's running that match.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Of course.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. How much time did you guys like go over like backstage? Like, were you there for How long?
So Logan, the guy, he oversaw the whole training process. We trained with, I think, 6 different people that all work at Millennium, and each one of them gave us a different perspective. But Logan was kind of like the mastermind of it all, and his program involved us not meeting our opponents until maybe an hour before our match, maybe 90 minutes or something like that. And he wanted it to be that way. He's like, wrestlers, some wrestlers train together all the time, but other wrestlers, they're on the road, and they show up for the match and they just got to kind of do it. And so he engineered it in such a way that it would work. And he knew the guys that we were wrestling against would be able to figure something out. And so I think what happened is Lawrence and I kind of worked together to figure out things that we wanted to do. We wanted to have some high spots, and we wanted to be able to take some heat. And then when we met them, standard introductions, and then they kind of they said like, all right, what do you guys know? Like, we understand that you haven't been doing this for a very long time.
Right.
We want this to be a good match for you guys, and we want it to be a good match for us. So then how do you want this to unfold? And then it was kind of like showing our cards. Like, these are the 5 moves we have, like or something like that. And then they kind of went and they were like, okay, well, it'd be good if this move came in kind of towards the end because it's a bigger move or something like that, and then working it through that way. But that was probably we probably met them maybe 90 minutes before our actual match. Spoke with them for probably 5-10 minutes, and then part of that discussion also led into us being involved in another match that they were in later in the show. So all of that stuff just happened naturally backstage. And it's pretty astounding how they were able to take what we had and then turn it into hopefully an entertaining match,
Yeah, definitely. How'd you guys get connected with Millennium Pro Wrestling?
Most of this was done through Rooster Teeth, the director of our documentary and the producers. When they wanted to set up this process for us, originally it was supposed to happen over the course of months, but because of how production goes, it was 6 days. But there's 2 major wrestling schools in the Los Angeles area. There's Millennium Wrestling Academy, and then there's Santino Bros. And and then they just reached out to, I think, both of them, and Millennium was a little bit more receptive about this is a great opportunity for us to kind of show a plan and build on a narrative as opposed to just give us a place to go and wrestle. That being said, I've heard really great things about Santino Bros too. But it was just kind of it wasn't super convenient too, because we were in the car for 90 minutes every single day just to try and get out to Moore Park. It's way north of California and stuff. So, or LA.
Yeah. So your average weekday, I assume you went to work at least part of the day.
Yeah.
So what did your average weekday look like during training?
So Lawrence and I would get to the office around 9 a.m. We would try and record a video, try and catch up on emails and stuff like that. And then around noon, the documentary crew would arrive, and then they would film us working, doing stuff in the office, trying to get up, and then probably by 1:30 or 2, Lawrence and I would hit the road, and then we'd travel up there, and then most days we had 2 training sessions. So we would get to the gym at 3:30, 3:45. We would work with one of the trainers for anywhere between 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. And then after that, we would eat some dinner somewhere. We were on a meal plan as well. The hope was for us to get cut or ripped or whatever. But it was ground turkey meat. So then we would bring that in a bag and then try and just eat it in the parking lot somewhere. And then around 7:30 or 8, they'd have another open class, which had all of their students that could go. And then we would just be there and work through an open class for them. So it wasn't one-on-one training, but it was very much this is what you would get if you came to this school.
Yeah, sure.
And then that would run until 10:15, 10:30. Then we get back in the car, drive back. I would get home generally around 11:30 or something, shower, crawl into bed, and then wake up the next day at, 7 or something and do it again.
Were you just like after the first day, you had to have been like every morning, you had to have been just destroyed, right?
Yeah, we did get a little bit of a taste of the true like road hard wrestling lifestyle, because by the end of it, Lawrence and I were like popping ibuprofen like they were candy, like, and it was kind of a new injury every single day. Again, it was an awesome experience, and but at the beginning, Logan was very emphatic that he's like, you will get hurt, but you won't get injured. Like, no one's I'm gonna make sure no one leaves in a wheelchair, but you're gonna be in pain and you're gonna hurt. And the first night, I came home, my back was just covered in huge bruises just from running the ropes. And then like the next day, I think it was like my knees. The day after that, it was like my neck, and then also you get headaches from taking those bumps. A lot that. It feels like it's probably easier once you've done it for a long time, because it's way easier to take a hip toss or a body slam than it is to stand in the middle of the ring, stand and then just take a bump and then get up again, do it, bump, bump. And we took a lot of bumps in like the first several days. But it was genuine. It was like a genuine experience. So,
Yeah.
Man,
so one of the more interesting parts of the documentary was what you mentioned Johnny Mundo earlier, John Morrison. John Hennigan, I guess. He goes by all those names.
Yes, it does.
And it, like, I was like we've known each other for a while. And so to see like one of my friends in the ring with Johnny Mundo, while it's cool, I'm still like intimidated on your behalf. That had to have been a weird experience. And specifically the part where and it was fascinating to watch him teach when he's talking about sort of being in your persona the entire time. And I was thinking, man, what was more intimidating, being in your persona just one-on-one? I know Lawrence is right there, but being one-on-one with Johnny Mundo, or like you have like 100 people or however many people were there. It seems like it might be more intimidating just one-on-one, being like acting, essentially being in your persona.
Yeah, it was. I was very intimidated the first time we met him, and he did a pretty great job of like just wiping that away.
Really,
because like even though that he kind of wrestled in an era where I wasn't watching that much, but I still knew John Morrison. Like I still knew his whole thing. I played the WWE games around that time, so we'd come out in slow motion. I still very much knew who he was, and then followed his career into Lucha Underground. So like it wasn't like The Rock, but it was still like someone that I knew. I'm very aware of, and I've seen him wrestle on the biggest stages on earth, right? And so I was very intimidated. And then lucky for us, I think just part of the way we set up the documentary and the way we shot it was that the first thing we did was compare our like wrestling gear with his wrestling gear.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned is that people that are fans of wrestling, you always have that. You can start with that. Like, and like he's a fan. And so we were lucky enough before we ever trained, like actually got into a ring with him, we got to spend an hour or so just shooting the shit about wrestling. And him showing us his feather jackets and like his fur and his leather and stuff like that. Because like Lawrence and I got our costumes. We came up with designs for them, and then someone in the costume department did an amazing job, made them. Right.
That was my favorite parts, is watching you guys sketch out your little outfits with your little you're like shaking hand because you're like trying to draw.
We're not artists at
great.
all. Like we're not artists at all. We did a little sketch out thing, but then ultimately we were like, we have a video game. We could just show you screenshots of like three model character. That's easier. And they were like, thank God. But
no, watching you have Johnny Mundo's like giant, like it sort of illustrated. It's like you're a well-built dude, but like you look like you were kind of swimming in that thing.
Huge.
Like he looks like he owns it when he wears it. That had to have been kind of weird to like put his giant jacket on.
Well, also because like he's not a cruiserweight, but you think of him as more of the high flyer type. But he's a huge dude. Like he's just built. He's like a pit bull. Like he's just built. But like even beyond that, it was just kind of the thing where you get this costume stuff and you're like, what am I doing? Like this is so stupid. This is so dumb. And I'm gonna be humiliated. Like, because my big thing is I don't want to disrespect anyone.
Yeah,
that like this is their thing. This is their passion. And so I'm like, I'm gonna show up in this stupid singlet and they have these gold boots. I'm I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, what the hell? Wings? Like, they're going to think I'm mocking them. And the good thing is with Johnny, like, you immediately show up, you show him that stuff, and you show him these wings, and he's like, oh, those wings are really cool. He's like, I have these sunglasses that have crucifixes on them. He's like, I like the wings. Like, he was into it, like, because he saw the character side of it. So in terms of training with him, by the time we got into a ring, he was just like, he's like a really cool, chill dude. And that's kind of how it was with every single person we trained with. Like, every single time we were like, these people are going to hate us because we're the imposters. We're coming in and we think we can do it in 6 days, you know, like, but like if it were up to us, we wouldn't. But then we get there and they're like, hey, you like wrestling, and we're really glad that you're interested in this sport that we love to do. And any questions you have, we'll open up to you, you know, and like, let's figure out how to make this an awesome match. Everyone was like, what can we do to figure out how to make it an awesome match? And then that way you guys feel great afterwards. And like,
that's awesome.
It was he was no different. We trained with Seth Skyfire, who is like another amazing athlete who every single person we trained with gave us a different thing. The first kind of trainers we worked with, Danny Devine and Daniel Moon at MPW, they're trainers there, and they were very technical. They're like, this is how you do a wrist lock. This is how you get out of a wrist lock. This is how you get into a headlock. This is how you get out of a headlock. This is how you run the ropes, right? Then we trained with Johnny, and he's like, well, you could put him in a wrist lock, but it's not nearly as important as what you're doing to present it to the crowd.
Right.
And are you the bad guy? Are you the heel? Because this is how a heel would do a wrist lock. This is how a face would do a wrist lock. Like, very much like, what is the story? What is the character? And then each like next trainer that we dealt with had a different perspective that kind of added on to that. So it's, you know, it's not necessarily about the kind of moves you do. It's about how long the match lasts, how you're feeding off the audience to kind of decide when to end it or when to hold off. You know, it's like all like foreplay with the audience and stuff. So it was a pretty remarkable experience how every single trainer thought about it differently.
Did you get it? Were you able to get, because one thing that we always pay attention to with wrestlers, and I'm sure you do too, is how they're able to work a crowd, how they're able to bring them up, bring them down. Were you able to get a sense of where the crowd was during your match, or is that something that you think might be, you learn more over time and time and time?
I definitely think that's something you learn more over time. We were in a unique situation because a certain percentage of the crowd was there already for us.
Oh, sure.
Which, isn't like, if you're just a wrestler who's just trying to make a name for himself, you're not going to have that luxury.
Yeah.
So we were very lucky in that sense that people were going to cheer for us. We thought we were going to be heels, actually. When we did the match, we were thinking we'll be bad guys because we're the imposters showing up in the ring, and then they'll show us at the end, you know, this is what wrestling actually is. But smartly, those who have done wrestling for a long time and know how to work the crowds understood that, like, there's no way anyone's going to boo you. Like, your fans aren't going to boo you. They're going to cheer for you. They're going to want to see you succeed. And so that's where it should start. And in terms of, I think it's just something you learn over time. My headspace was, I just want to make sure I can hear the guy that I'm in the ring with.
Right.
So I was just focused on that, and they were confident that we would have a good flow to the match, but that's clearly what they were doing. Kind of like what I was saying about like adjusting the headlock in such a way that it presents it to the crowd the right way. They were already there. The two guys we wrestled knew exactly what we were going to be, what an audience would expect and how to work with that expectation to deliver a better match.
Yeah. You spoke a little bit ago about having like an encyclopedic knowledge of wrestling and so forth. Were there any matches that you showed Lawrence to kind of draw inspiration from, whether what you want to do in your match or just based on what characters you were trying to portray?
Yeah, Lawrence, as Lawrence tends to be, was pretty hard on himself during the whole process, and there was a point during the middle where he's getting pretty frustrated, and he was like, there's no way this will be entertaining, and it was, I think, the match that I did show him, because 2 days before our match we sat down and we just watched some wrestling. And I showed him Taker versus HBK in the Hell in the Cell, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we were watching it, and we had done enough at this point that he could, like, I was like kind of showing him, and because that whole match is just, it's like striking and then whips into the cage, you know?
Yeah.
But it's awesome. It's such
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great
yeah.
match. And a lot of it was showing how Shawn Michaels will just like get hit by the Undertaker, and then he'll like pinball around the ring, like whipping his hair, pinball around the ring, and then just come back and then get hit again.
Yeah.
But all he's doing is just selling it. Like, and it's just 2 punches. But in one of the punches, he falls backwards, flips up in the turnbuckle, comes around on the apron again, and then gets knocked out again.
Yeah.
And I was kind of showing Lawrence, I was like, they didn't have to discuss that. Like,
Yeah,
they just had like it just had to know, like, you're just gonna beat up on me.
Yeah.
And when you hit me, I'm gonna go. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go wild. And then there was the kind of moments where like they land on the cameraman, which then that guy has to be taken out, which opens up the cage, and it's like those are the planted moments.
Right,
And you can
right.
kind of see how those are going on, but everything else is just those 2 guys just kind of like knowing each other, and then knowing that like it's not necessarily about it looking realistic, but it's about like really performing it. And
Well,
Yeah.
enhancing
And
the
telling
drama.
a
exactly.
story.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's only a couple moments where Undertaker gets on the beaten up side of it, you know,
Yeah.
where he
Yeah.
takes any heat. And it's mostly Shawn Michaels just getting hit every once in a while,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
tumbling somewhere and then coming back into it. And it was also pretty relevant because earlier that night we had learned about feeding, which is just kind of a way to approach confrontation in a match, so that way the person knows that you're giving yourself to them to be beaten up on,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So like you go up, you get slammed, you pop right up, and there's a way to stand up, and it's always kind of a cycling clockwise. And then you stand up and you kind of whoa, and you come back, and so that way they don't have to know what to do next, but they know what's happening to you.
Right,
so you
right.
don't get one of those moments where like you come around, you try and hit them, and both of you guys like hit each other at the same time. Like,
totally.
and it's
Yeah.
like that whole match is feeding. It's Shawn Michaels taking a hit, wobbling around in a way that clearly communicates to the Undertaker without any words. Hit
Yeah.
me again. Hit me
Yeah.
again, and then I'll come back for more and stuff like that. And so when he could see that in such a high-profile match, I think
Yeah.
it kind of made it less intimidating. You know?
Well, that would have been interesting for you too, because like I didn't know that was like a thing until you just told me. Now when I watch it, and like you just told me in one sentence, but you had like a full training experience.
Yeah.
Like now when you watch like any match, you can be like, oh, totally getting this.
Yeah. And again, back to the language thing, like they don't necessarily. Well, the way we learned it with Millennium was it wasn't that we're going to teach you how to feed. It was just drills of you're on your back, get up the right way and go back, and they made it feel like it was a cardio session.
Yeah.
One of their trainers, Clint, was like, let's do some cardio. And so it started with just Lawrence and I lying on our backs, getting up as fast as we could. But he said, you have to get up this way every single time. So we did 50 of them or whatever.
Right.
And then afterwards, he was like, that's how you get up every single time.
That's interesting. Just like instilling muscle memory into
Exactly.
your body as opposed to trying to teach a lesson. That's interesting.
Right,
It's kind of the same thing with just taking bumps, too. Like, the hardest bumps to take are just standing on your own 2 feet and falling on your back.
Yeah.
But when you learn how to do that, and that's how your body learns to react, like come really big back and then hitting it all at the same time, it doesn't matter if someone's hitting you with the backdrop or if you're trying to do a swanton off the top rope. You're going to try and do the back thing every single time. And so it's weird, these tools that they give you that elaborate on everything.
Yeah, it is very much like a language. You have these basic moves that are like your alphabet, and just putting them together to construct sentences and stories is fascinating.
Yeah.
So going back to our very first question, we never answered it. I noticed that you guys have been doing some spots during the Let's Play Live
shows,
stuff.
Yeah.
But do you have any interest in getting back into the ring? Does Lawrence, by the way, like we haven't talked about Lawrence that much.
Yeah.
But my God, he was totally inhabiting his character.
Oh, yeah.
Like through it, like every shot that they showed of you guys, he was full on troll. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's there now, but send him our best because he was fantastic.
He was cutting promos too, like they were
Yeah,
a couple
yeah,
things
yeah.
where we were cutting promos, and even like since the documentaries come out, like Let's Play Live, and then even like doing like podcasts and like interviews like with you guys and stuff. Like there's been a couple times where Lawrence has cut promos as the troll, and I'm like, gosh, he is in it. Like he knows exactly what to say. Yeah, he
It was
embodied
pretty-
the character definitely.
It was pretty awesome when for that week or so you guys were on Twitter, in character essentially, and he was just trolling everybody. It was great.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm planning on at least continuing in a casual way.
Sure, yeah.
Like I don't think I'm going to hit the road and do it.
Yeah.
But
The sign with NXT, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of with it, I was like doing it. I was thinking there are grown men that do taekwondo, or whatever MMA, but they don't plan on winning a title at UFC. Like they don't want to win a karate world championship or anything like that, but they do it because it's great exercise and they really enjoy it. And so I definitely plan to continue it. And I would love to do more matches because there's a big difference between training in a ring and just like kind of shooting the shit and then going out and performing it. There's a rush that's just like utterly great. And Lawrence has expressed the same interest to me as well. The big problem again is that it's hard to get out there. The frequency at which we can train, I don't know how good we'll get. But I think it's something that we at least want to try and do as a hobby and keep going. But yeah, after we finished the documentary, we were like, well, we're gonna heal. We're gonna get our bodies back to close to 100%, and then we can go again because we got boot camped real hard. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, hey, listen, if you do it again, make sure it's not opposing any major pay-per-views because we kind of have to do those.
Absolutely.
But please let us know. We'll definitely come out and check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious. Have you guys ever been interested in
Shit,
God, no.
God, no. We make that plain. Even back in college,
I'm not taking any bumps.
I was like, these guys are crazy.
Yeah.
I could never do that. But hey, if you ever need a manager or two managers, we can put our H title up, our Triple H title up. You and Lawrence can maybe fight for it. I don't know. I'm throwing that out there. That's for you. You can do what you want with it.
Absolutely.
But if nothing else, we'll be there cheering you guys on, or maybe we'll be booing you guys. I don't know.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It feeds me. Either way, the cheers doesn't matter.
Exactly. Hey, by the way, don't think I didn't notice you got the fun shirt.
Oh yeah,
and not the Steve W shirt on. So don't
respect.
Don't think I
respect to James Angel.
Yeah, you know what? You can rep him, and I'll get the troll over on my side, and then we'll figure that out. Anyways, James,
I'll
thanks
take
so
the other
much.
shirt. That was just that I went to that one. I was like, I like the design of that shirt a lot.
No, I know
too.
it's so infuriating because I'm the design guy out of the both of us.
Yeah.
And then he shows up with that, and I'm like, are you kidding me? That blows me out of the water. It was fantastic.
I'll wear them both.
Perfect. See. Yeah. Anyways, thanks, James. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you
check out House of Pain. It's on Rooster Teeth first right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Thanks, James. We'll talk to you later, buddy.
Awesome.
Later,
Thanks,
buddy.
guys.